Well, James Comey was arraigned yesterday privately, secretly, given all kinds of courtesies, and right here I'm going to explain why it's almost certain he will not see the inside of a prison cell. I'm not going to be like a typical conservative channel. I'm going to give you the real deal right here. Also, Democrats are standing firm behind Attorney General Democrat candidate in Virginia, even after all of his disastrous text messages were released and made public where he strictly advocated for the destruction of his political opponent's entire family, even going so far as to state that he would piss on their graves. Democrats aren't pulling support. I'm going to cover that. And then finally, hope is on the horizon for the Republican Party when it comes to the midterms. I've been meaning to cover this for a while now. We are seeing a massive influx of Republican voter registrations happening all across America. Several states we're talking, not just a couple. Could we be in for a second red wave in the 2026 midterms? You're going to want to see this. It's very, very eye-opening, and depending on what side of the aisle you're on, I'm assuming most viewers of mine are conservative, very encouraging. So stay tuned for that and maybe a little more right here, right now on American Advocates. All right, first off, let's get to the real deal here when it comes to James Comey. And I've heard this question a lot from Democrats, especially because they're aggravated to see this arraignment happen. And so the question is, what was James Comey charged with? That's what you keep seeing in the comments from them. What's he even charged with? He's not a criminal. He didn't do anything wrong. Well, flat out, James Comey was charged with lying to Congress. Also, obstruction. And you can see that demonstrated right here in this video.
Do you stand by your House testimony on March 20th that there was no surveillance of the Trump campaign that you're aware of?
Correct.
You would know about it if there were, is that correct?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Now, if you're a Democrat viewer and for some reason you're still watching this, I would highly like to take the time actually to encourage you to dislike this video and never come back. But that being said, you don't like the idea that that is a lie. You don't like that at all. Or at the very least, you come up with excuses for why it's permissible. Trump needed to be spied on. He's a threat to democracy. Nevertheless, he lied. He lied in front of Congress. And it can't be made any more clear than in this side-by-side video. I've mentioned in prior videos of mine, I love these side-by-side videos that you see emerge all over the place because it really does do a good job of highlighting the gaslighting and blatant lying that Democrats do all the time publicly. So take a look at this.
Have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
No.
Did you show copies of your memos to anyone outside of the Department of Justice?
Yes. I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel.
Chairman Grassley asked you point blank, quote,
Director Comey, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
Never. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
so your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak. And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
They really truly are just so comfortable lying out in public because all of their voters have like an 80 IQ at the highest. And so they just eat it all up. They spread the narrative that their media overlords tell them to. You can't even begin to fathom the amount of absurd comments that I get all over my social media pages. You should follow me on all of those social media sites, by the way. American Advocates, you can search for that. Threads, X, Facebook, Instagram. The comments are absolutely hilarious and so uninformed when it comes to the Democrats. They just easily fall hook, line, and sinker for the lies passed down to them by people like James Comey. And that's why these videos are so important. They expose all of it. And so, yes, he rightfully was indicted and now has been arraigned for lying to Congress. What's unfortunate about all of this is it's just lying to Congress. I hate to say it, but this is the best that conservatives could come up with. I mean, give me Give me a break. It's very disappointing, but this is just how the Republicans tend to operate. They are very lousy at pursuing justice against their opponents. They're always terrified of how it will look optically. I can't for the life of me, by the way, understand why. I mean, you can't look worse to the Democrats optically than at this point in time. They already have the worst possible viewpoint of you if you're a conservative politician or even a conservative voter. According to them, we are fascists who are eroding the democracy of America, intruding on everyone's freedoms, and an overall threat to the country as a whole. I mean, they've made that very clear. So at this point, what do Republicans have to lose, I ask you? What do they have to lose by pursuing justice and even a little retribution against their political opponents who literally did the same thing relentlessly to many of them from the years 2020 through 2024? That's my question. That's what bothers me. Like, they're always worried about Democrat retaliation, too. That's the other one. And it's like, well, we already lived through 4 years of that. We saw that Trump went easy on them. He promised to drain the swamp and ultimately decided to not pursue that goal when it came to people like Hillary Clinton, for instance. How was he repaid? They went after him with ridiculous charges, resulting in 34 felonies, they love to say. 34 bullshit felonies. The result of kangaroo courts that they had pop up just to be able to charge the guy with anything. But they didn't care. They didn't take into account the fact that Trump went easier on them than expected. They went after him full force. Savage. So what's the holdup here, I ask? When it comes to James Comey, he was ultimately arraigned for lying to Congress and obstructing justice. This took place in the Eastern District of Virginia, United States of America versus James B. Comey Jr. And I'm showing you this document because I want you to take a look at a name that's going to wind up being very important here. Look at the bottom right-hand corner. That is the judge, United States District Judge, Michael S. Nachmanov. Not even sure how to say that last name. I've done some research on him, though, and who this judge is going to be very important in just a couple of minutes here. But what I really even want to show you is just the optic absurdity of what we saw here when it came to how James Comey was arraigned yesterday, compared to what we saw, for instance, under the Biden presidency when he targeted his political enemies and how they were brought in. James Comey was snuck in through a back door, so he didn't have to be perp walked. He wasn't shackled, none of that. He was able to enter of his own accord and dodge all of the press and all of the cameras. And you can see that right here. This was Fox News, along with all the other main broadcast networks, lined up outside the main entrance to the courtroom, waiting to be able to see him.
Our producers inside the courtroom say the former director accused of lying to Congress, obstructing a congressional proceeding, entered the plea moments ago in front of the judge, Michael Nachmanov, appointed by Joe Biden. Not guilty on both federal charges. He's accused of lying in front of Congress back in 2020. So that is the update inside the courtroom. And while that's happening in one part of Northern Virginia.
And they wouldn't see James Comey exit from that main entrance at all either, by the way. He was also snuck out of the courtroom after pleading not guilty in front of the judge, Michael Nachmanov, who, again, I want you to remember that name because I'm going to cover him in just 1 second. But why am I going over this? Well, it's because this should trouble anybody who's been paying attention at all to how things have been going on, to how things have been done here legally across America, especially during the Biden presidency over the last 5 or 6 years or so. You can see right here, this was James Comey. There were some independent journalists here who snuck around to the alternate exits of the courtroom and saw him leaving, of course. Not answering any questions, not taking a moment to talk to the press, not looking at any cameras. Ultimately making his escape and being able to plead not guilty, leave the courthouse just in time for his personal trainer appointment and a shopping trip later. I'm only laughing because it's so stupid how Republicans are handling this. All because they're worried about optics. But this right here is why I am actually upset about how this was handled even optically. In my opinion, James Comey should have been shackled and perp walked through the main doors for the courtroom. He could have been released after pleading not guilty. Sure, let him walk out on his own accord, but he should have been dragged into the courtrooms the same way these two people were. This is Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, two people I would call American patriots who were persecuted by the Democrats and the Biden regime while Biden was in office. These guys were not given the same courtesy that the Republicans just gave James Comey yesterday. And it's sickening, not only to me, but to them as well. They can't stand how this went down.
The juxtaposition of my situation, misdemeanor for an alleged crime that wasn't, leg irons arrests through Reagan Airport. We learned yesterday from Senator Chuck Grassley's big reveals that they surveilled me. They didn't regard me as armed or dangerous. They just did it as a circus arrest. They had a dozen agents involved in that. I got the mug shot, I got the handcuffs, I got the leg irons, I got the jail cell. It made me sit there for a couple hours, and then the judge and I go out and face the microphones and the music. I didn't have anybody escorting me out the side door. And then you got Comey, okay? It's like felony, up to 10 years in prison, involved in arguably the worst political conspiracy in America's lifetime that stretched all the way from 2016 when he was at the helm through 2024, multiple times to overthrow the president when he was in office or to stop him from getting elected in 2016, 2020, and 2024. And Steve, the central lesson that I have, I gave it at the Republican National Convention in my speech the day I got out of prison, is if we don't hold them accountable, they will do it again. I went to prison so you won't have to.
It makes me upset that these two guys had to witness this special treatment for James Comey at the hands of the Republicans, who are once again playing softball with these kinds of people. And it's not setting a good precedent for what we can expect as American people who demand justice out of our elected officials when it comes to these corrupt Democrats. We want justice. I highlighted in my other video the other day about how the Republican trend on social media that I'm seeing when it comes to all of these things being exposed, like Antifa, for instance, and George Soros funding them, and the FBI scandal that was just unveiled by Kash Patel, documents found hidden, locked away in a vault, revealing that the FBI was spying on 8 United States Republican senators. They were spying on TPUSA and Charlie Kirk. They were spying on everyday American citizens who were protesting abortion clinics, parents who were attending school board meetings who were Republicans and advocating against things like transgenderism in schools when it came to their 7-year-olds. These were all people being spied on by Biden's FBI. And the outrage is prevalent. And it's great that the transparency is there. But we know inherently that the Republicans are useless at achieving justice and handing out actual consequences that set up deterrence for future behavior like this. We know this. I've never seen Republicans actually achieve anything meaningful when it comes to pursuing justice against Democrats when they deserve to have justice dealt upon them. And as a result, we were seeing comments all over social media. Oh, send out the strongly worded letters. I've seen that comment like 8 times already. I'm now typing that comment up for shits and giggles online because it's true. And to tie that all in with Comey, they gave him all these courtesies that weren't afforded to Republicans like Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon, and let's not forget General Mike Flynn either. These people were persecuted, they were not given any of these courtesies, and the Democrats know inherently how to throw on an optic show for the media to trigger the public outrage needed to get people on their side. You just heard it from Peter Navarro. He was shackled, forced to sit in a jail cell for hours before his court arraignment hearing, all of that. Comey was able to just walk in and out like it was just another 15-minute business meeting part of his day that was scheduled, came and went, and oh, you're free to go, Comey. We'll get you out of there promptly for 10:30 a.m. Don't you worry. Ridiculous. I thought this political cartoon here, right here, summarized it very well, actually, because the outrage is just, it's there. Everyone knows it. The Democrats are just afforded these courtesies for whatever reason that they don't afford back to Republicans when the shoe's on the other foot, literally. So absolutely ridiculous. And this softball game being played by Republicans once again on Democrats doesn't give me much hope for true justice to be served, for James Comey to wind up going to prison, which is why I genuinely think he won't go to prison. But it gets much worse than this. This is just speculation. Here's some hard facts when it comes to what's going on here, when it comes to the judge overseeing this case. He was a 2021 Biden-appointed judge. Judge Michael Nachmanov. I don't know if I'm saying his last name correctly, nor do I care. He was a Biden-appointed judge, and that gives me even less hope when it comes to James Comey's trial here being handled correctly. And it gets even worse than the fact that he was just a Biden-appointed judge, because this is the state of Virginia, and there's a lot of Democrat elected officials in that state, a lot of Democrat judges. So ultimately, what are you going to do about it? But I do find it peculiar that he was a randomly selected judge. That's what they're telling everyone, and that's how it's supposed to be. But here's what I was able to pull up when it comes to this judge. It turns out Judge Michael Nachmanov was actually given his first job when he was fresh out of law school back in 1995 by James Comey himself. He was hired by James Comey. You can see right here. After graduating law school, Nachmanov served as a law clerk in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia from 1995 to 1996. After his clerkship, he joined the firm Cohen, Gettings, and Dunham PC, where he was an associate from 96 to 2000 and a partner from 2000 to 2002. From 2002 to 2015, Nachmanov served in the Office of the Federal Public Defender for the Eastern District of Virginia, starting as the first assistant public defender from 2002 to 2005, the acting federal public defender from 05 to 07, and the chief federal public defender from 07 to 2015. And when he got that job in 1996, he was hired by James Comey. And then even after this judge decided that working in a private practice wasn't going to work out well for him, and he left, James Comey hired him again in 2002. So can you say conflict of interest? Not only was he hired by James Comey once, but he was hired by James Comey twice. This clearly demonstrates a working relationship between the two of them, I'd say, and maybe even more than that. I mean, it could be a genuine friendship even at that point. I mean, the very fact that he was hired by him twice throughout his career, not just once. Not good. Maybe that's why James Comey has been all smiles on his little selfie-style videos that he's been posting on social media about all of this, about how he's going to stand strong on behalf of the American people and stand against tyranny and stand against President Donald Trump like he's always promised. Saying so while smiling. He doesn't look too stressed out about all of this, does he? And that's, again, for a whole host of reasons. First and foremost, it's being done in Virginia. It's being done by a randomly selected judge that he definitely knows and has, as it turns out, has hired twice throughout the judge's career back in the day, gave him a good start. Not to mention the fact that the charge itself, lying to Congress, that's the best the Republicans could come up with. And they're playing softball with him. They're already giving him all of these courtesies, like I said. Sneaking him in and out, making sure he's not embarrassed, making sure he doesn't have to answer to the press. He's not shackled. He's not sitting in a jail cell. He's not being charged with things like treason. He's being charged with lying to Congress. CNN is absolutely correct here. This is very likely what will be the fate of James Comey after all of this is said and done.
Ask Caitlin, I take it that the judge did not ask for Comey to be detained while he awaits trial. Is that right?
That's correct. So he's being released just on his signature alone. That's a personal recognizance bond. He was never under arrest. He was summoned to come to court today, and that's how it'll work going on from here. He's being ordered by the judge. You've got to come back for all of these additional appearances, and right now there's only 2 other hearings on the calendar at this time. One in November, one in December, for the government to argue everything to try and get this case tossed. We'll get the rulings in writing from the judge, and then there's a trial date, which they say it'll only take 2 to 3 days to get this through a trial, and this is a court that moves fast.
Caitlin, very quickly, if he's convicted on these 2 felony charges, how much time in jail potentially could Comey face?
Well, the maximum for these 2 counts that he faces, it's a 5-year maximum prison sentence. That is extremely unlikely. Essentially, no one gets that. And Comey would be, if he were to be convicted, a first-time offender. There's also a fine that would come with a sentence, but there's a lot of different options, and probation would always be one. We often are not talking about custodial sentences when it comes to something like this, a false statement charge.
That's some pretty spot-on reporting there, in all honesty, by CNN, and it does shatter all of the Republican copium that I've been seeing on social media. They say stuff like, well, this is very minor, yeah, but this is to really get the ball rolling with the Trump DOJ. This is where they're going to start, and from there, it's going to snowball effect downhill, and they're going to start targeting Brennan and Clapper, and then they're going to go after Clinton and even Obama. And it's just, would that be the right thing for them to do? Is that what I want to see happen? Absolutely. Am I under any sort of delusion that the Republicans will actually get the ball rolling using a lying to Congress case against Comey to get that ball rolling? No. And I need to do a much more thorough investigation into Attorney General Pam Bondi going forward in the future, because not only can I not stand her, but there's just something not right about her, and I'm going to look into her career and her past going forward. But for now, I mean, why have faith in any of this yielding any sort of a result that Republicans want? Why would I have that when I've never seen that in my entire life? I know I'm young, but I've never seen that in my entire life. I've never seen Republicans get a win, ever, when it comes to something like this. And if you agree with that statement, be sure to subscribe right now to American Advocates, because I created this channel because of stuff like this, in all honesty. And we need more conservative channels talking about it like this, not pumping out some sort of crazy narrative. Oh, justice is coming. Comey's going away for a decade. Comey's going away for a decade, and that's just the start. His cellmate's going to be Barack Obama by this time next year. Mark my words. If you like channels like that, please don't come to this channel, because this channel's not for you. I'm here because I want that to be reality, but I know it's not going to be. And I'm also here because I know it's not going to be reality, and it disturbs my soul, and I want to do something about it. Something. I want to be able to do something about this in the future at the very least. So subscribe to American Advocates for more content like this. On to the next story now. You may have heard it here. You may have heard it reported here correctly first. That's for certain, because the liberal mainstream media severely underreported everything going on with the Democrat Attorney General hopeful in the state of Virginia, Jay Jones, when it came to the sickening text messages that were leaked off of his private cell phone, when it came to him literally wishing harm and death onto his political rival's family and even his political rival himself. And this is just devastating, especially just a couple weeks removed from the Charlie Kirk assassination and just over a year removed from 2 assassination attempts on the current president of the United States. Political violence is on the rise in America, and you would at least like to think that it's just radical liberal voters who are on too much medication, who let all of the violent Democrat rhetoric get to their head and eventually wind up acting on it. You'd at least like to think that. Then after the Charlie Kirk assassination, we see literally over 100,000 social media posts combined coming in from what appears to be everyday Democrat voters, doctors, nurses, teachers, lawyers, celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, gleefully celebrating it, happy that it happened, wishing that it would happen more even in some cases. That was eye-opening enough. And then this story breaks. Jay Jones, he's running for the Attorney General of the state of Virginia. He's a Democrat. And in private text messages, he's been wishing the same thing on his Republican conservative political rivals. So now we have a full picture of the current modern day Democrat Party. According to this Washington Post article, Democrats largely stand behind Jay Jones even after violent texts. Amid concerns about political violence, some say the party risks looking hypocritical by sticking with the nominee for Virginia Attorney General. The article says Democrats are largely standing by their nominee for Virginia Attorney General after revelations that he once mused about killing a GOP lawmaker, worrying some in the party who want to draw a hard line against political violence and drawing accusations of hypocrisy from Republicans. Top Democrats have condemned the 2022 text from Jay Jones, but declined to join Republicans in calling for Jones to drop out. With early voting already underway in the battleground state, Republicans have quickly made the text part of their closing pitch to voters, highlighting them in ads and attacking other Democrats for their muted responses. The texts have put Democrats in an uncomfortable position at a moment when concerns about political violence are running high, growing after the killing last month of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. And it's not just a killing. I'm going to correct this article. That was an assassination, a political assassination. Democrats have long criticized President Trump and his allies for violent rhetoric and now face scrutiny for their own candidate in a marquee race. Some Democrat lawmakers, particularly from the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, which Jones belonged to when he served in the State House of Delegates, have begun expressing support for Jones. Other leaders in Virginia and across the country have remained noticeably silent. Most importantly, Democrat gubernatorial nominee Abigail Spanberger, the Democrat running for governor of Virginia, has said she spoke with Jones about my disgust with the text, but has not indicated whether he should stay in the race. Asked whether Spanberger still supports Jones, spokesman Connor Joseph sent a written statement Tuesday that did not address the issue and instead praised her record of finding common ground across the aisle when she served in Congress. And I really just want to remind everyone, these were the text messages, just some of them, that were released, leaked, made public off of Jay Jones' phone, where he literally states, I mean, do I think Todd and Jennifer, Todd Gilbert, his political rival in 2022, and Jennifer Gilbert, his political rival's wife, he says, I mean, do I think Todd and Jennifer are evil and that they're breeding little fascists? Yes. He also states that he wishes that Todd's children would die in Jennifer Gilbert's arms, the mother's arms. He then goes on to state that if they die before me, I will go to their funerals to piss on their graves, send them out awash in something. And he even fantasizes about a scenario where 3 people are in a room with him and he has 2 bullets in a gun. And he mentions Todd Gilbert, his political rival at the time in 2022, alongside Adolf Hitler and Pol Pot. He then goes on to state with those 2 bullets, Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. And then he states, spoiler, put Gilbert in the crew with the 2 worst people you know, and he receives both bullets every time. At which point the person he's conversating with even is startled and says, Jay, please stop. Those were the texts, and the Democrat Party is still standing behind him openly. The best case scenario we've seen out of Democrats are that they're muted about this, like the Washington Post article says. They're not saying anything, but many of them are openly supporting this man, citing reasons like, oh, it shows tremendous growth since 2022. He publicly apologized to the Gilbert family and recanted everything he said on TV, and he's deeply apologetic. This shows the kind of growth that you want out of an attorney general candidate. In fact, that's literally their reasoning. And at this point, it is a fair assessment to say that not only are Democrats committing more and more political violence in America, not only are they more favorably viewing that political violence happening, where they're happy about people like Charlie Kirk being assassinated, they're happy to see people like President Donald Trump almost assassinated, and they're happy to openly joke about the death of their political rivals via text like Jay Jones. But then on top of it, all of their surrounding Democrat colleagues openly support this behavior. That's where the Democrats are in 2025. And then they have the nerve to get mad when I say stuff like, they're the enemy from within. Prove me wrong. All of this is happening in front of us now. To further strengthen my argument here, I mean, it's not just being stated on like Washington Post articles where they're saying that Democrats are supporting Jay Jones. The Democrats are openly showing their support for Jay Jones on camera. This is Virginia Democrat Senator Tim Kaine being asked about Jay Jones. This is what he has to say.
Senator, do you still support Jay Jones? You do. What do you think he should drop out of this race after those comments? I just answered your question. You have concerns about what you saw?
The comments are completely indefensible. I've known Jay Jones for 25 years, and those comments are very much out of character for him. So if I put the comments, which are clearly beyond the pale, against knowing this guy for 25 years, I'm still a supporter of Jay Jones.
But not only is he still supporting Jay Jones, he also, when asked about whether or not Jay Jones should drop out for the attorney general race in Virginia, he gives his opinion here as well, stating that he should not drop out. It's one thing to even support somebody you've known for 20 or 25 years, like he says. It's another thing to insist that somebody who has made text messages and remarks against his political opponents like he has should not drop out. I mean, that's just horrendous. Take a listen.
Do you think Jay Jones should drop out of the race in Virginia?
Jay has apologized. The statements that he made were indefensible, but I've known Jay Jones for 25 years. I think those statements were not in character. And he has apologized. I wish other people in public life would sincerely apologize for stuff. So, no, I still am a supporter.
Now, put yourself in a scenario where Jay Jones, in an alternate universe, is actually a Republican running for Attorney General of Virginia, and it's a close race. And then a Republican version of Jay Jones has his text messages released where he wishes death upon his Democrat rival's family and says stuff like, gee, I wish my Democrat opponent's children would die in my Democrat opponent's wife's arms. I hope she has to witness that. Then I'll go piss on their graves. And if I can find a gun with 2 bullets and I can be completely absolved of the crime, I would love to shoot my Democrat opponent in the head twice. Do you think that, first of all, the Republicans would be gracious towards their own in a scenario like that? No, we would condemn that person and be disgusted by them. Then on top of it, do you think the media would be as gracious to that alternate universe Republican Jay Jones, where they're underreporting the texts in a way that leads you to conclude that those text messages were completely taken out of context, that he didn't mean any harm by it in actuality, and on top of that has shown tremendous growth by apologizing sincerely for those texts, as if that's good enough? Do you think it would be good enough? Do you think the media would be satisfied with that? Do you think the Democrats would let that just sweep away in the wind without putting up a major fuss about it and calling for the immediate dropout of that Republican Jay Jones? I can't imagine a world like that. But here we are, where the shoe's on the predictable foot here, a Democrat's foot, Jay Jones, and the Democrats rally behind him. The media severely underreports it. Everybody's standing with him when it comes to his own side. And the Republican outrage, in my opinion, is not big enough. This guy has no business running for Attorney General in Virginia after this. He's a threat to America, a severe threat to America. He's the exact kind of guy who's the enemy from within. When I say there's an enemy from within, he's that guy. These text messages prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt. You don't just wish death not only on your political rival, which is disgusting enough, but to say that you hope his children die too? It should be no surprise, unfortunately, that Tim Kaine would stand with Jay Jones even after all of this came out because, well, this is Tim Kaine's son right here. Turns out his son is associated with Antifa most likely and was one of the ones that stormed the Minnesota Capitol in an anti-Trump riot back in 2017, even setting off explosive devices possibly and tear gas. He also fought the police and did not do a single second of jail time, all because, of course, his father is Democrat Senator of Virginia, Tim Kaine. And so why would Jay Jones' text bother Tim Kaine? Why would they when he's produced a son like this? And they always say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. One of the good things, at least, a silver lining that's coming out of all of this Politico reporting, Jay Jones' texting scandal breathes new life into GOP push in Virginia. The fallout from the Democratic Attorney General candidate's unfiltered text messages has scrambled the bellwether race. Republicans are bullish about a statewide race in Virginia this year after recent revelations the Democrat Attorney General nominee sent text wishing violence on his political adversaries. President Donald Trump and Republicans have seized on the messages from Jay Jones, who wrote a Republican colleague about bullets intended for then House Speaker Todd Gilbert. The messages unearthed a month before the off-cycle election have given the GOP hope that Virginia's incumbent Attorney General Jason Miyares could emerge victorious in what otherwise appears to be a tough bellwether year for them. And here's the best part. This is turning out to be absolutely true. This was just reported yesterday, breaking. Virginia Attorney General race is now statistically tied after Democrat Jay Jones was exposed for wanting to kill Republicans and wishing for the death of their children. Jay Jones is at 46% with just a 1-point lead over Jason Miyares at 45%. And I agree with this statement. It should not be close. Storm the polls, GOP. And when it comes to the Virginia race now narrowing because of this scandal, that actually leads me right into my next story. I've been meaning to cover this for a couple of weeks now. I've been noticing it happening more and more. We are in for possibly a second red wave across this nation when it comes to the midterm elections in 2026. There has been an insane trend, a massive uptick of Republican voter registrations occurring across several different states throughout America, and it's absolutely inspiring to watch it all unfold. In fact, per a morning consult that tracked Americans' ideology just this morning, mind you, across all 50 states, it turns out There are 38 states now with an overwhelming conservative ideology across America, and just 12 states, of course, where it's a liberal ideology. And you can see this is the actual results of that poll right here. This is not looking good for Democrats. President Donald Trump actually took to posting on social media about the massive influx of Republican voter registrations we're seeing. You can see he mentioned 4 of them right here. That one on the top right will shock you. California is actually in there. I'll cover that one as well. Pennsylvania we're seeing, Arizona, New Jersey. The race is tightening across all of these states, and the Republicans' grip when it comes to these midterms is tightening on the Democrats, and they are squirming over this. They're getting more and more uncomfortable. I found this one fascinating right here. New Jersey's political ideology poll also this morning. According to the poll, it's 32% conservative to 30% liberal, and then 30% moderate. And I actually want to discuss that moderate 30% right there, because not only would you be able to fairly say that conservatives have a 2% advantage in political ideology in New Jersey, obviously 32 to 30, but the moderates being at 30. We're seeing more and more people in some states actually identifying more as moderate or independent. And I want you to take note of that, because that is not a bad thing when it comes to conservative favorability in upcoming elections. It's a bad thing, however, for Democrats. What we have witnessed ever since Trump's first election, but especially now, especially this year and last year, we are witnessing people who are ashamed of their own party. And I'm not talking about Republicans. People are ashamed of the Democrats. And they may not want to just jump ship. I don't blame them. If you've grown up your whole life on one side of the aisle, it's a scary thing to do, to just jump across the aisle onto the other side. You don't just do that. I understand that. And that's what we're seeing here when we're seeing an uptick of people identifying as moderates or independents. It's not a bad thing for Republicans, because what we're seeing is people leaving the Democrat Party. They don't want to identify as Democrat anymore. They look at their party as extreme, embarrassing, not representative of who they are anymore. I've actually stated this a couple times now in past videos. I actually believe there's a future where we see the current modern day liberal progressive party completely diminish, completely be dismantled as they move towards progressive socialism, extremely so, not representing people when it comes to immigration or law and order or a whole host of other economic concerns. And I don't blame them. The Democrats are terrible with these. Believe it or not, transgenderism is not popular for anybody, not even Democrats. Neither is immigration, open borders, or complete lawlessness that we're seeing in these Democrat blue cities. People don't like that. So they go, I'm an independent now, which kind of gives them permission to really gauge future elections and decide. And they're going to be more likely to vote Republican going forward, I think. And that's why I think there's a future where we see the liberal progressive party dismantled, like I said. And in all honesty, based off what I'm seeing from people like Rand Paul, who's becoming more and more annoying with each passing day, the libertarians seem poised to step up as new Democrats almost. They're going to be the opposition and the counterbalance to Republicans in the future. I can literally see that happening. It's not a guarantee. Maybe this country's full of enough voters who are radicalized enough to vote in socialist liberals like Zohran Mamdani, or even somebody like Attorney General Jay Jones, who actually wants to push for some of the same stuff Zohran Mamdani is pushing for in New York City. Maybe there's enough of that. I don't know. We'll have to see. These midterms coming up next year will be very, very revealing for that. Nevertheless, that's what's happening, and that's why there's an uptick of people identifying as independent or moderate. And when it comes to New Jersey, I want to move beyond just even the political ideology poll, because that's a nice poll to look at, but let's look at the hard numbers for the state of Virginia currently. As of October 1st, in a stunning shift, New Jersey Republicans have now more than doubled their voter registration over the Democrats since September 1st. The Republicans are now sitting at 6,747 new registered voters since September 1st. Nevada is another state where we're seeing this influx of Republican registered voters. Just 2 days ago, Nevada flipped back to Republican for the third time. Nevada's close. It keeps flipping back and forth between Democrat and Republican. We need to keep that state red. But just 2 days ago, it came out with numbers. They wound up gaining 6,049 new Republican registered votes for the month of September to give them this 2,284 registered voter lead over the Democrats. And so they are once again currently a red state, but it is a narrow margin. Like I said, they flipped back and forth 3 times. Still overall very encouraging to see. This is also an exciting one right here. Pennsylvania has gained 77,431 Republican voter registrations since December of 2024, which has now whittled the Democrat lead down to just over 53,000 total. In just this week alone, actually, the Republicans gained 2,300 new Republican voter registrations compared to the Democrats gaining just 1,600. And so we're seeing net leads in voter registrations week over week all across the state of Pennsylvania. This is going to be a tough one for the midterms, Pennsylvania. It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. I'm still not overwhelmingly hopeful for Pennsylvania, but it's a good sign. And we have a lot of time still until the midterms actually hit for Pennsylvania. A lot of time. This is a state I'll be following very, very closely. This state not only matters for midterms, but it will absolutely matter in the 2028 election, which is very far off, of course, but things are looking somewhat optimistic for Pennsylvania. Now, this one doesn't matter as much, obviously. It's Florida. Florida's red. Everyone knows Florida is red, but Florida has increased their voter advantage over Dems to now 1,386,733. Florida is making historic waves with these numbers. They are red. They're not going blue anytime soon. And even some of their blue counties are now at risk of turning red as well. I think I remember Palm Beach being one of them and another one. It just gets more and more red in Florida. We definitely can thank Ron DeSantis for that. He's been an incredible governor for that state. This is another good one right here. North Carolina voter registration. They're on pace to be incredibly red by the midterms. This is one of the most optimistic states I have for midterm performance in 2026. As of 3 days ago, North Carolina was only 1,000 voters away from the Republicans having a 100,000 voter registration lead over Democrats. You can see here the change from September to October. Republicans gained 6,411 new registered Republican voters. The Democrats only gained 2,369, which is a 4,000 net voter lead over Democrats for the month of September. And again, take a look. That third number, I don't know if you can see where I'm reading here, but the middle of the chart, you see the elephant, the donkey, and then I guess that's an eagle. 17,450 new other moderate, independent registered voters. And like I stated a few minutes ago here, that is a bad sign for Democrats, at least in my opinion. It's not the Republican Party right now that has all-time record low approval rating. It's the Democrats. It's not the Republicans right now that are having a problem with people feeling embarrassed or ashamed to be registered as Republicans. That's why we're seeing an influx of Republican registrations across all of these states. It's the Democrats who are ashamed of their own party, who can't identify with anything their party stands for, who feel like their party doesn't represent them anymore. And so that's why we're seeing this uptick of independent voters, 17,450. If even half of those or more go red and vote red for the midterms, Democrats are absolutely screwed for the midterms, especially in North Carolina. That's a projection, of course, but that's my theory on that, and I think it has a lot of merit to it. This one right here, Rhode Island. This one caused Democrats to absolutely raise their eyebrows at this at first. I'm showing you some backdated information. Change from August to September. Republicans gained 317 compared to the Democrats losing 188. Was that just a freak month, though, from August to September? No. This is from September to October. Republicans gained an additional 381, and then Democrats lost 408. So Democrats have started losing even more as the months have gone on now, and Republicans are gaining around the same each month, it looks like. In this state, Harris won by 70,750 votes. But since the election day, the Republicans have narrowed the total Democrat lead by just 12,298. Now, Louisiana's decently red, but even Louisiana is making some waves here as well. Republicans added 1,685 new voters since September 1st. The Democrats have lost 2,139 voters in Louisiana since September 1st. And Louisiana is going to be a landmark state when it comes to midterm elections and all of the seats and representatives that the Democrats stand to lose in a Supreme Court case coming up centered around this state and the egregious gerrymandering that we've seen the Democrats pull off there in an attempt to maintain power. And I'll briefly go over that Supreme Court case in just a minute here. But first, I want to show you this clip right here. Somebody speaking about California.
Nearly 50,000 new Republican registrations to just 190 Democrat registrations in the last 200 days. Again, it's not a typo, gang. Republicans are adding new voters at a rate of nearly 350 to 1 as compared to Democrats in freaking California, the state of the grease monkey himself, Gavin Newsom. Stanislaus County just became the latest California county to flip from blue to red in voter registrations for the first time in a decade. And it's not stopping there. Riverside County, Orange County, Fresno, Lake County, Nevada County, they are all on the verge of flipping from blue to red in terms of the voter registration trends. The numbers in California are absolutely mind-blowing. Republicans now represent 26% of voter registrations, up from 22% just 18 months ago. All the while the Democrats have dropped from 47% to 44% in the same time period. Even in the deepest blue state in America, the Republican surge is undeniable.
And I want to highlight that because if you can see a Republican surge happening in even California, easily the most liberal state in the entirety of the United States, then certainly a second red wave for the midterms that would break the political trend that we see throughout the decades, where a Republican president gets voted in and then the House and or Senate is lost 2 years later to midterms. That trend is easily, it appears, going to be broken next year. Especially if things keep happening the way that they're happening in this country, where the Democrats are losing favorability, losing support, losing popularity, making all of the wrong decisions. Political violence on the rise at the hands of Democrats much more than at the hands of Republicans. Not good. The assassination of Charlie Kirk, I believe, will play a prominent role in the midterms next year as well. And when it comes to the state of California here, this is why it is so important to vote no to Proposition 50. That is Gavin Newsom trying to be incredibly slimy when it comes to his elections. Prop 50 will steal the power away from the citizens of California and allow Gavin Newsom to gerrymander the hell out of California even more. Even though Republican voter registrations are surging in the state and they technically by default then would deserve more representation, Gavin Newsom wants to steal the power away and be able to gerrymander the state to provide much less representation for Republicans. He wants to add 5 Democrat seats in his state to match the very legitimate and justified redistricting we saw Texas pull off. So if you live in California, vote no to Prop 50. Now back to Louisiana to wrap this all up. Here's the thing. The Republicans are set to win huge depending on how this Supreme Court case goes. We had breaking news occur just yesterday as Democrat voting rights groups are frantically preparing for the Supreme Court to abolish the Voting Rights Act districts, resulting in 19 more Republican House seats likely being added. And what this case is that we're seeing here is Louisiana versus Calais, the case that could finally desegregate American politics. You can see a little summary of this, actually. For 60 years, America has lived under a well-intentioned but fundamentally racist assumption that black voters can only be represented by black politicians and that Hispanic voters can only be represented by Hispanic politicians. This premise, enshrined in Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, has forced states to draw congressional districts according to race, not citizenship, community, or competence. What began as an attempt to expand opportunity devolved into a mandate for racial segregation in politics. Very true. Not comfortable for everyone to address or talk about, but very, very true. It also gave rise to a generation of racial opportunists who used the act to build personal power by stoking division. I've seen projections out there stating that if the Supreme Court rules in favor of the Republicans on this case, that we won't just stand to gain 19 more seats for Republicans. We could gain up to 27 more. Huge, huge news. All in addition, mind you, to the +5 that Texas has gained and all of the good news that I just showed you when it comes to voter registration at the hands of Republicans happening all over in true influx style across America. What are your thoughts and opinions on this, though? Do you feel the same way I do about this? Is a second red wave heading towards America for the midterms of 2026? Or is this just ridiculous, delusional, Republican wishful thinking? And for sure, we will lose the House and or Senate to Democrats in 2026. Let me know what you think about it truthfully in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe right now to American Advocates for more content like this as well. Unless, however, you're a Democrat who thinks a blue wave is coming in 2026, and you for some reason think that Trump is more unpopular than ever. If that's you and you're just that misled, then please find your way off this channel, never come back, and dislike the video before you leave. Thanks so much for watching.